Hello, this is a short video giving you some ideas about how to approach revising and editing your argument evaluation. And so what I want to do is talk through some of these pieces, and this list is based off of what I saw when I reviewed your rough drafts. So I don't give feedback on rough drafts unless you meet with me or have a conference outside of class. But I do check them, and I check them to see, well, what advice can I give kind of the class as a whole as far as going back and really looking at your own work to see what could be improved, what you could adjust, how you can make it stronger than it is. The first thing that I noticed when I was reading through is that I saw that many of you were starting with a summary, but many times it sounded more like a referential summary rather than a rhetorical summary. I'm actually going to send out a document of a couple of examples of those different types of summary. But for this type of essay, doing a referential summary where you list out the author's thesis and the author's main ideas doesn't make the most sense as far as setting up for the rest of the essay. That makes it seem like you're going to be solely focusing on the author's ideas in the article, not how it was written. Whereas the rhetorical summary is asking you to summarize basically the rhetorical strategies that the author used in writing their summary. And so it is much more in line with what we're actually doing in this particular essay, because this essay is all about looking at how the article was written. And so that's what a rhetorical summary does. It summarizes, in essence, how the article was written. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that document that I'll send out and just make sure that you understand that difference. Another student had asked, do you have to start with a rhetorical summary? The answer is no, you do not. There are many ways you can successfully start and end this type of essay. That's just a really logical and reasonable way, which is why I offer it up. But again, that does not mean it is the only way. So just something to keep in mind. The other thing that I noticed as I was looking through introductions is I saw a lot of introductions that actually didn't give any sort of sense of direction for the rest of the essay. And what I mean by that is a lot of times I saw students introducing the article in some way, either a rhetorical or referential summary. It seemed like that was pretty consistent. But then it didn't ever lead or transition to what your point and your purpose for writing the essay is. And so if you're going to set your introduction up where you start with that summary, where you're introducing the article, then within that introduction paragraph, you need to transition to your direction for the rest of the essay, which really means that you should have some sort of claim about the credibility of the article, or if you'd recommend it. You can really do either one. The credibility seems to work better as far as my next point, which is making connections back to the flow and transitions. And so it literally is just a claim or a thesis like you would have in any other essay, right? You would state that either you think the article is credible or it's not credible with some sort of block statement or cover statement of why. It's not listing out every point you plan to cover. It's just giving some sense of the direction that you're going so that your reader isn't lost or confused about what you're doing in the essay. Then, of course, that helps with flow because it gives you something to connect every paragraph to. What I was seeing in a lot of the rough drafts, and by the way, these are all really common things that pop up in this essay, so by no means does any of this mean that you all are doing a bad job or a poor job. You're just in the rough draft stage of the writing process. These are things you can look at to make it better. I want to emphasize that. But what I did notice is that I think because probably the way that the pre-writing is set up and that I do assign pretty specific sections that you need to address, when I was reading through some of the rough drafts, what I noticed was like each paragraph on its own made sense. Like I could read paragraph number 2, totally made sense on its own. Paragraph 3, totally made sense on its own. But it didn't actually all come together as a smooth flowing essay that fluidly goes from idea to idea and is all connected together. And so I think that's something that I would recommend everyone revise and really edit for, is make sure that you're making those connections both between your body paragraphs to show when you're shifting ideas, but also then making that connection back to your specific claim about the article's credibility. Don't leave your reader guessing. No one likes to guess. I don't want to have to pretend like I'm putting myself in your shoes and questioning and guessing at what you think. Like, it needs to be direct. And so that's something to consider as far as how you can make everything connect. And part of that might also be considering the order of your paragraphs. I noticed that, and it's, again, there isn't a wrong and a right, but I noticed many of you just set it up in the order that I had the sections listed. That may not be the most logical order in terms of connecting the ideas. So you might need to kind of go back and really rethink what makes most sense, what paragraph makes the most sense to have first, second, third, etc. Next thing on the list, specific evidence from the article. I saw a lot of you were making claims about the article, but not actually pulling in specific quotes to prove what you're saying. If you're going to say that the author's tone was too informal, pull in a quote to prove it and analyze that quote and explain how it's informal and how that impacts the quality of the essay. If you're going to say that, a claim was a claim of fact, we'll actually quote the claim or paraphrase the claim if it isn't directly stated. So make sure that you're pulling specific evidence in to support every paragraph, because that is your support in this essay. If you don't pull any evidence, then there's no reason for your fellow students to agree or disagree with you. They wouldn't have any reason to feel that you are credible. So make sure that you're going back to the article that you're using and intentionally pulling in support to back up your ideas. Now, the opposite of that is some of you are just pulling in too much support right now, or it's only support, meaning that you don't have the analysis explanation connecting all the pieces. So if you're going to pull in something, so if I'm going to make a claim that the article's claim is a claim of fact, I need to explain why I think it's a claim of fact, right? I'll probably need to quote the claim itself, and then I need to explain how is that a claim of fact. How does that then impact the credibility of the article? Does it make it less credible? Does it make it more credible? And that's what you want to do with that space. And so really making sure that you're explaining everything for your reader. Don't leave anything up to guessing, or like a mystery puzzle where as a reader, I'm not sure how it connects back to the credibility. As a reader, I want to know exactly how you think each point connects back to the credibility of the article. So just make sure that you're including that clear analysis and explanation throughout the essay. Another thing, and this wasn't as consistent, but it was something I saw enough that I wanted to bring it up, make sure that you're giving yourself one specific main idea per paragraph. I think some of you are still trying to hold on to that 5-paragraph essay structure where you have like an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. I'm going to tell you straight up, let it go. There is no way that structure will work for this essay. There is more than 3 sections you have to address. You need to give thorough analysis and time and space to each section. So make sure that you're dividing those out. Don't try and use that overly simplistic format on a college level essay, even a shorter college level essay. Next on the list is just complexity. Think through the complexity of the article. Not everything will make it credible or not credible, right? So you might have 5 reasons why you think the article is credible and another where, that kind of impacted the credibility a little bit. Don't think of credibility as a absolute, as a 100% it's credible or 100% of it's not. Think about credibility on like a sliding scale, where on one end you have like the most credible and on the other end the least credible. Use that as a way to kind of think about credibility and really address the complexity of what articles have in them. Don't make it seem all fluffy bunny. Like there's things with most of these articles that we can be critical about. And then the opposite is don't be so critical that you fail to see some of the positives that maybe popped up in terms of how the article was written either. This complexity can also help you actually in the conclusion itself. So sometimes in the conclusion, the purpose of a conclusion gets lost. So the purpose of the conclusion is to tie up the essay, right? To pull it all together, to make sure it sounds like it's ending, to make sure it sounds like it's closing off, and then to make the connection to your reader, which is what should your readers do with this information? So if I have an article and I'm like, well, it's kind of credible, right? Maybe it's not super credible, but maybe it's in that, it's semi-credible, right? Not totally not, but semi. Well, maybe I don't recommend for students to use it. Maybe I say I would not recommend for students to use this in their essay. However, This might be a nice starting off article to get ideas about the topic, or hey, this article actually mentioned a couple of sources. Those sources might be a credible place to start. Or it could be used to just gain base knowledge on the article, but maybe not something to cite from, or used to compare other articles to. So there's lots of ways that a student might use it beyond in their essay. So when you're thinking of your recommendation, try and decide, like, is it an article that students should absolutely use? Like, you feel like you're very confident in saying 100% yes. Maybe there's absolute reasons where you're like, no, like really this should not be an article students use. But I think what you're going to find is that for many of the articles that our class has chosen, it might be more in that middle ground where there might be a way it could be used, but maybe not as a credible source in the essay. And so maybe thinking through that aspect a little bit will help you kind of fully develop the conclusion. Two other things I wanted to note that are not on my list. In terms of editing, I already mentioned transitions. I'm also going to send out a words to avoid list. You all created your own words to avoid that was like your top 20 personal words you want to stay away from. I'm also going to provide a list that I have, and I want to emphasize that the two words that I want you to try and stay away from is you and your. Those words are more problematic than any others when doing argumentative writing, because in essence you're giving your reader commands or you're telling them what to do and think. And most readers don't like to be told what to do and think. I want to be given the option. I don't want you to decide for me. And so to get rid of those you and yours, replace it with the subject that you're talking about. If you are talking about students, students should not use this in their writing. Then say students. If you're talking about the author, say author. If you're talking about writing, a writer should not. So just make sure that you're really paying attention to those two words, because like I said, they're going to cause the most problems in terms of logic and credibility in your writing. Other things, yeah, we don't cover punctuation a lot in here, but that doesn't mean that you should ignore it either. Just make sure that you are paying attention to some of those other editing pieces. At this level, it's really assumed that you have a pretty solid grasp. But of course, if you still need work, there's lots of sites online that can help out with additional grammar pieces. But just make sure that you are spending that time to proofread and to edit, right? One of the things that several students mentioned earlier in the term during week 1 was the idea that sometimes an argument can seem less credible just based on someone's grammar. Like if it looks like that student didn't care or that person didn't care. And so you just want to make sure that you're taking the time to do it. Other than that, like I said, looking forward to seeing final drafts. Hopefully this gives you some ideas of what to work on or what to look for in your own essays. Don't forget to take a look, of course, at peer review feedback as well, and let me know if there's anything else I can help you with.